Fate the Winx Saga is based on a TV series that came out in about 2008 or 4, back in the early 2000s. It was seen as a epitome of what it was at the time. It had lots of characters. They were all multi-race, very dimensional characters, very stylish. It was just great all around. So when I heard that there was going to be a reboot of it, I was very curious on how they were going to take those characters and age them up and what approach they would take. Because think about it, we live in the CW Riverdale era now. All of our teen dramas are really angsty. There's sex, there's violence, and just things that we didn't have. I didn't have in my teen series growing up. So I was very curious what approach they would take. And what approach they did take, what I'd say is definitely leans more into the Riverdale, Pretty Little Liars side of thing, but they try to keep it PG, which I find very odd, but they did it. And even the book series, they do that as well. First, I'm going to talk about the characters and their priority of their importance by reading the book series. So what the book does is that they break them down into what their actual function is. So you have specialists, fire, water, earth, like that kind of thing. So they'll actually say like this is the POV. It's like it's like omnipresent. So basically it's like seeing all, knowing all, versus in one character and what they see on the outward spectrum. The most important character is Fire, so that's Bloom. In the book series, you learn a little bit more about what Bloom's struggle is, so you actually kind of get the sense of the torment she goes through. So the book series opens up on Bloom talking about how she's hiding in a warehouse and Mrs. Dowling comes and saves her and reaches out to her. That's not very explained well in the TV series, so I really appreciate it, that it added that additional dynamic of understanding why Bloom was so reliant and so willing to believe Mrs. Dowling, because she actually saved her from a very bad moment in her life. But in most of the series, Bloom is just wildly accepting of things she shouldn't be. She's very young. I was surprised at how young Bloom is in her thoughts. I think that's the most shocking thing. But you do find out that Bloom is actually 16, which she is in the series, and they decide to keep her that age. But unlike other series, she's not like mature for her age. She literally seems like she's 16. Not that many friends, very sheltered, very uncouth, as they say. And as she's so being in Althea, she kind of comes out of her shell a bit and is a little bit more accepting of herself. And then next in importance, surprisingly, it's Riven. Riven in the TV series is honestly a very trash character. Very trash. But in the book series, he's actually redeemable. You kind of get sense of what's in Riven's head, which is kind of missing in the series. So you find that Riven and his servant's like a second year. And Riven has lived mostly in Sky's shadow. Riven's very troubled. He's very behind. And he feels like Sky took him in as, okay, let me help this poor boy who can't do anything himself. So that really gets into Riven's mentality. And it helps you see why he's the way he is, because he himself is very insecure, which the series doesn't go into at all. And I think that helps a lot understanding that, and makes you like and cheer for Riven more as a character. In the TV series, I liked Tara. I really did. I feel like she was honestly the best character in the TV series, just because she was most well-rounded. We had a good understanding of her background story. She said that, oh, I'm big. I know that. I know people are saying that, but I'm actually powerful, smart, and talented. So I like that. That is taken to the book series, but Tara is a lot more insecure in the books than she is in the show. And there's lots of moments where Tara talks about how the outward incidents that people are doing. For example, there was a scene where Musa and Aisha are talking, and Aisha's like, oh yeah, I eat so much, that's why I have to swim, and Musa's like, ha ha ha, yeah. And Tara goes into like a little bit about her insecurities. So, and she's always seen as like invisible. So actually think about it, she's grown up her whole entire life at this school with her dad's a professor, so she's been invisible and no one sees her. And then she has this roommate, Musa, who sees her and hears her but chooses to ignore her. So you feel that. And Tara is less empowered and a lot more insecure, and she wears her weight and her invisibility like a badge of shame versus having something that propels her forward. Weird that this book tries to create situations for them to understand their motivations. So the author who wrote this is a novelization by Ava Corrigan. I looked up Ava Corrigan and I found nothing beyond this book. So it makes me think that possibly she's a ghostwriter, because it'd be very odd to choose someone who has never written anything in her life to be the author of this book. And the history of books being made out of TV series isn't that absurd. For example, if you've seen Younger, Marriage Vacation, that was a book that totally took place in the world of Younger that they made into an actual novel. So it's not unfathomable that this exists, but why does it exist is the question. Who is the audience and target for this that wouldn't have watched the TV series? We have Sky. Sky is a very bland character in the TV series. He remains a very bland character in the book series. His dad is dead. We find out that his dad is actually not dead, which is a whole nother wild, crazy thing, that his dad basically was like, I don't want to spend time with my son. I'd rather hang out with Beatrix, this witch, and raise her than my own son. Literally wild. Why is that a thing? Sky has I want to say an unhealthy obsession with Silva, his teacher, who I guess raised him after his father died, and he's loyal to him to a fault. I mean, to a freaking fault that Sky is full on soldier mentality, where he follows the mission, what's responded of him, without any of his own personal thoughts, and that carries in. Even to how he thinks of Bloom and his relationship with her, as well as interactions with other characters. Sky dated Stella before the book series starts, and we do get a sense of why he cared about Stella in the first place. Because they both came from our children of royalty in their respective ways, that was always their bond. In another world, they probably would have married, joined the two kingdoms together of Arakion and whatever this planet is, I forget, and Bennett. But unfortunately, Stella has a whole bunch of her own issues that she's working through, and Sky is a good guy, definitely a good guy, but unfortunately just not able to handle what Stella is giving. Now, Stella is a character who we learn so much more about in the book series than we do in this show. You really understand where she's coming from. Her mother is a nightmare. Her mother is emotionally and physically abusive to her, which they kind of touch on in the TV series, but the book definitely gets into the psyche of how everything that Stella does, she thinks about what her mother would say, what her mother is thinking, what her mother would do to her in an instance. How Stella can't be kind or generous because that's not how her mother raised her. Anything of niceness is a sign of weakness. And that really just goes into every single interaction that Stella has with characters across the board, even with Sky. And that's the thing where you see where Sky's like, okay, I get that her mother is awful to her, and Stella's actually very weak, even though she puts in the strong persona, because her mother will not settle for anything less. Wish the series had done more of trying to show Stella as that person versus waiting so late. But again, 6 episodes. 6 episodes is hard to try to figure out who someone is in all actuality. Musa. I didn't even go into races just because I feel like it's been said time and time again if you know anything about this. So Tara was originally a Hispanic character named Flora, but she was replaced with Tara, who is plus size and white. In the books, Flora was a Hispanic girl, and that's just like the big thing about what I've noticed about this series is that they have replaced characters who are BIPOC with white characters. It's not the same. It's not the same at all. Having someone who is plus size is not the same diversity as if they were of color. I'm all for seeing more body diversity in the series. The original Winx Club was severely lacking in it. Like, here are they back in the day. Very skinny, very unrealistic body types like Barbies were. No one actually looks like this. Flora just had been a plus size character, but also Hispanic. There is no reason that they had to completely get rid of her race in order to make this. Musa is in the book series. She is of Asian heritage. It's assumed that she is Chinese from the anecdotes they have in the series and how she dresses. That's lacking completely. Musa is just generic. She is Musa. We don't learn anything about Musa except that she can read minds. But originally, Musa is a character who feels music. But I guess if that was too basic and they didn't want to pay for copyright, so like, okay, let's make her a mind fairy, which I'm not mad about. It's just that, again, we're getting rid of someone who's a BIPOC and replacing them with someone who is white passing. Yeah. So I just don't like that. I just don't like that at all. I forgot Beatrix. Beatrix is surprisingly insignificant in the book. Don't know why. She's like the main antagonist the whole entire series, but that's how they portray her. Beatrix, they don't get into her motivations. I'm gonna assume she's just been brainwashed her whole childhood. She was kidnapped and raised by two very awful people, being Rosalind and then Sky's dad, to think that everyone's against her. So no fault to Beatrix that she's a bitch, but that's what she is. Final two characters I'll be talking about are actually our only black characters in the series, who I think have the least amount of screen time. There are so many white characters on this and literally only two black people of importance. Dane. Dane's only personality character trait is that he is gay and maybe bi. That's it. That's the interesting thing about Dane. And they enforce it so hard. They're like, okay, it's 2021, so we're going to try to have a LGBTQIA plus character. It's going to be Dane. We're going to he does not exist in the original source material. Dane's just a point of contention for Riven, who was into Beatrix at the time. Fortunately enough, in the TV series and the book, we learned that Dane is both interested in Beatrix and Riven honestly seems barely here for it. So Riven is also, I believe, a bi character too, which I hope that they delve into more in the sequel to the show. And lastly is Aisha. Aisha was done such a disservice. I am very angry at how they portrayed Aisha, what they've done with Aisha. Aisha was originally called Layla in the series. She was also a water fairy. I looked it up, and apparently Layla means dark beauty, which was originally found as offensive because it means that's what dark beauty is in Arabic. It's just more so how one-dimensional they made her seem. All she cares about is swimming. She's water fairy. You don't see Bloom always talking about one of the fire things. I guess Tara is always interested in plants. Musa is very interested in music. I get it. But her only character traits are that she's into water and she's really into her academics. I don't get why that's what Aisha had been relegated to. I don't think it was fair. I was not a fan of it. They could have done way better than doing that to her. The plot, high level, is Bloom, a girl from California who has been raised human her whole life, finds out that she's actually a fairy from another dimension, goes to Althea. And we found there's things called burn ones, which are, so think of them kind of like as a werewolf type person, but they turn into burn ones. And once they attack you, you're infected. Unless they kill that burn one, you become one of them. Where they originally come from, not explained. But that's the whole thing we're fighting the whole entire series, as well as Beatrix, I briefly touched on. She's at Althea because she's trying to avoid something that Mrs. Dowling has, which we find out is this woman named Rosalind. Rosalind, it turns out, was a past headmistress of Althea. She's super evil, very, very evil. Thing where she gaslit Mrs. Dowling, Silva, Tara's dad, into killing a whole entire city of people because they said there were burned ones there, but in actual reality, they were blood witches. They have had Rosalind. She is up in a thing, protected, so no one can reach her. She's basically like suspended animation this whole time, which she has been in for the past 16 years. Why don't just kill her? That was very confusing. If she's so bad and she's so evil, she's been missing and everyone thinks she's dead, but you haven't killed her. You just have her in the sense of animation. Bloom is coming to the terms for the fact that she is actually not, she's been a changeling, meaning that she was stolen at birth and replaced with a baby from the normal world. It was very confusing why Miss Dowling knew that Bloom existed, even though Rosalind took her. Very not explained. Beatrix, get it, tricks, funny, Bloom into letting Rosalind out. And so Rosalind is out, and then she unleashes, takes down the barrier that's around Thea. There's a barrier, and all the burned ones get into the gate. But it turns out that actually the burned ones have been looking for Bloom this whole entire time. And so that's why a burned one has not been seen in 16 years, is because Bloom has left for the past 16 years. Not really explained. Book, TV series, not really explained at all why they're after Bloom so much and want her to die. There is a lovely 1-minute montage of this series as honestly about almost 4 hours of content of Bloom destroying these burned ones with this knowledge she learned from Rosalind as well as her teachers. And they're gone. Like that. And it's like, yay, you did this all yourself. There is no reason for the Winx Club. Oh, okay. In the book series, Winx is explained. The TV series does not explain what Winx means. Winx was actually just the name of their dorm room. In the actual show, Winx is a fairy at their optimal potential, like having their wings. And then finally, Rosalind's escape. Bloom defeats the burned ones, but joke's on you. That's not what the actual point was this whole time. The whole goal, Rosalind's actually been the bad guy the whole entire time, the real bad guy. The burned ones were just a distraction. They weren't the actual people you should be concerned about. Has these weird motivations to take over Althea. Why? We do not know. She kills Mrs. Dowling. Sky's dad comes back. He was never dead. He was raising Beatrix this whole time. Silva gets arrested for being the attempted murder of Sky's dad. Seeing the Bloom girls come back. Mrs. Dowling's dead. Silva's arrested. Rosalind's back in charge of Althea. And it's like, why? What was the point of any of this? I do not know. It was misdirection the whole entire time. If Bloom had never let out Rosalind, none of this would have ever happened. There is no way a person under the age of 35 worked on this series because there's lots of fake wokeness. We see racism, homophobia, queer baiting, fake feminism. It's just not what any of this means in an actually socially conscious show. This show is trying to be woke, it's trying to be aware, but it's none of those things, and I'm not here for it. There isn't. Don't waste your time. This was more than enough for you to know. And just don't. Book's not great. If you have a child you want to read it, I'd say give them the book. If they're under the ages of 12, I'm sure they'll love it. But if you're over the ages of 16, if you really have to watch the series, but just don't, go watch Teen Wolf. Just rewatch Vampire Diaries, okay? If you're really wanting some content like this, or heck, you can find the Winx Club to watch on YouTube. Do that. do anything but actually watch a series and contribute to the inadequate, insufficient messages that they're trying to give you, because they're not fair, they're not right, and there is nothing that is making any of this okay and acceptable. I really tried, it's just not present. Alright, thanks guys for watching. I'm Kaya Simone, and I'll see you guys next time.